Welcome to Akhand Vidyashram, the first institute of impeccable wisdom. Let's discuss about TURIYA number 8, oxygen, water, glucose and integration of human brain. Let's discuss what the last slide we discussed about photosynthesis. The sunlight as a zero and everything starting from there, including helium from there. Then also the formation of oxygen from the use of carbon dioxide and water of 22 and 10 into the plants, flowers, into oxygen for the universal consciousness, one part. Second thing which comes out is glucose. So you have oxygen, you have glucose and you have water. Three things play a very important role. Let's not talk much about carbon dioxide at this particular juncture. And that is the photosynthesis which I am very particular about. Now come to the question of let's understand 10 stages of glucose homeostasis. Source of energy is glucose and there are two processes. One is called glycolysis, another is gluconeogenesis. Glycolysis means how glucose is converted into pyruvic acid or lactic acid, or how lactic acid glucose is converted back to glucose over the 10 stages. This both 10 and this goes on within the human body as such completely. And the role of the cell and the liver comes to a very important part, and these are the 10 stages which I am talking about. You can initially, but the few points which I like to make it very clear. It is a glucose which gets into glucose 6-phosphate first, then fructose 6-phosphate. That means both glucose and fructose are important, and it is a fructose which gets into glucose form in the liver is something which I want people to understand. So glucose and fructose combination as a sucrose is the ideal combination than the refined sugar as such. Once that is understood, we can understand the whole process will be very congenial and very harmonious within the human body. And there are two processes more. How 6 carbon glucose is converted into 3 carbon intermediate sugar, triose is one part, and how finally it gets converted to 3 carbon acid like pyruvic acid and lactic acid. Pyruvic acid is in the presence of oxygen and lactic acid in case of no oxygen or anaerobic process. And once this science is understood, I think we can understand how to make healthy, wealthy, wise human being life to be a perfect in tune with universal consciousness. This is something which I am talking about. Second thing, as a homeostasis, now I am going to talk about the person who can maintain 111 milligram blood sugar per 100 ml of blood constantly is the perfect one in tune with universal consciousness. That's the ideal situation to be in tune with TURIYA itself, the universal consciousness, one with Akash-Kosh. Now a range between fasting of 80 and postprandial of 140, that range is absolutely fine. This is if you maintain within fasting only 80 to 100 and postprandial 125 to 140 is the ideal combination. Once that is maintained, you are very well. When you disturb from that is something which you can go to pre-diabetic stage and finally to diabetic stage. These two stages are not conducive for TURIYA stage, and let me make that particular clear. And this is a graph which is important for me to maintain a perfectly healthy, wealthy, wise and happy life, and that is what I am going to discuss today as a TURIYA itself. Now come to the question of understanding the glucose utility by the brain cells. In this particular picture you can see down the GLUT1 and GLUT3 are included. But at the same time you see how the glucose is used by astrocytes, which are the additional cells outside the neuron cells in the brain. And also glucose is used by the neuron cells where TCA comes to play, trichloroacetic acid cycle or Krebs cycle, how the formation is there and leading to the formation of pyruvic acid and glucose by and large, and energy of ATP, ADP, etc. That combination makes the thing very, very clear. So TCA is carbonic acid, how the glucose is used to convert into energy, and that is energy is going to be used to keep yourself perfectly healthy, active, and extra energy in the brain. And I am talking about, it is the glucose converting into energy, ATP, which is going to give you extra energy to make you efficient, intelligently, intuitively, otherwise. That's the point which I am taking very clear. That is, glucose utility is required for the blood cells, and we are going to talk about the percentage as we move on. Second is the same example in a different way, how glucose is taken into the astrocyte one side, and same thing into neurons and synaptic and postsynaptic process, how the process goes on, and how mitochondria produces, and how things are. Once this is particular cycle, you can leisurely read and understand. But what is important, how the glucose is converting to pyruvic acid, lactic acid, and back to that is what I talked about, is glycolysis and gluconeogenesis. Once this picture is clear, you are very clear, you are very calm and quiet, and this particular process, let me tell you, you are in a cranial parasympathetic system predominantly. Make it very clear. Predominantly you are in cranial parasympathetic system, and that's it. Now come to the question of GLUT1 and GLUT2. This is utility cycle. Pyruvic acid, lactic acid, the drama, let's understand. GLUT means Open GL Utility Toolkit. This is a mechanism to understand how things happen. So GLUT1 and GLUT3 are the two processes which take place in the neuron cells glucose uptake itself. Since it is meant for a common people as such, let's not go into detail. The experts can read about it detail in internet or the books by and large. Now coming to the question of important question for me to discuss about the human brain. Human brain is equivalent to 1.5 kilo weight. That is the brain size as such, which is only 2% of your size. I am say 70 or 75. 2% could be around 1.5 only, and I would say average good brain is 1.5 kgs. That is 2% of the weight of the body is represented in brain. Size is very small, just 2% of the size. But the cardiac output, that means the amount of blood which a heart pumps out per minute, 15% of that blood goes to the brain. That means amount of glucose and oxygen and other ingredients required for the brain, almost 15% of the body's complete output, which is phenomenal amount. 15% of the 5 liters is 750 ml, and I think that speaks volume. You can see the picture very clearly from internet. 2% of the weight, cardiac out 15%, then amount of oxygen is 20%, and this is the phenomena which scientists have found in every normal person. Then fourth thing which comes to play is amount of glucose consumption is put very clearly as 25%. That means out of blood, 25% is going to be used by the brain itself. That means anyone who is very intelligent, very intuitive, working with the brain 24/7 beautifully, would not suffer from diabetes, because the amount of glucose they used it up is phenomenal. So diabetic person may not be using it, or the intelligent people most probably would not need any treatment for diabetes, because it will always be within that. And the very moment the low blood sugar comes below 80 milligram, those people will not be able to concentrate. The brain is also true. From my experience, I will say 111 if I can maintain continuously, then it's a perfect function. 80 could be deficient, and more question does not arise in my case, because I am very intelligent. Otherwise, concentration into brain is 1000 times better than other things. So my Gyan, Vigyan, Pragyan, Akhandta makes me stand out. So question of diabetes does not arise because I used it up. But I do know, if I work for 22 minutes at a stretch, concentration within the brain, I literally feel tired because you can't brain work more than that. How people can study for 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, I can't understand, because for me 22 minutes of concentrated work is more than enough to make my brain feel fit, because they are used up the oxygen, and unless it takes something refreshing, it would be difficult for me to come back. And that is a statement which I am making it very clear with all my experience, कि diabetes is not a problem for an intelligent person who is using the brain effectively, integrated way. He will not suffer. Let me make that clear. People who are having weight, having diabetes, best thing is they should become intelligent and start working conscientiously in the brain rather than other parts of the body. They should go beyond, and that is what I am going to talk about it in this particular process. Turiya is a concentration in the brain, and that to samadhi state beyond the brain itself. Now come to the question. Another Divyank ratio is, I have told you, 61.803% is one part and 38.196. The brain utilizes 61.8034% of the oxygen in my concentration, and the scientists also said that 60% is used, but I would say 61.8034% is much more important. As well as cellular integration is concerned, they talk about 40%. I would say that is 38.1966. Once this is how oxygen utilization in the brain is done, I think you are perfectly healthy. And this is where I am trying to take science as such and show that spiritual and science makes a difference much more clearly. Now come to the question, another graph which is very clearly done by the scientists, and that is also Divyank ratio. In this picture you can see on the bottom part, I would say 61.8034% of the hemoglobin oxygen is used by the brain, and 38.1 is partial pressure of oxygen. Once this is concerned, I think you will understand how the brain is going to function, how the respiratory system is going to function, other thing. And science has made me understand this use, partial pressure of 38.196% and blood hemoglobin level of oxygen of 61.80% is optimal for brain function, but others is arterial, but brain should be only that much, leave the remaining for the rest of the body to function effectively. Now I am going to give you glucose utility patterns in one normal stage and two disease states, and I have an objective for this particular picture to show how two defects of the brain, and I like you to see, and maybe I am going to explain to you. Now you see the left side down part is the normal brain, and you can see the glucose uptake is red color around periphery, or in brain you have all the neuron cells external outside, not inside, whereas up to brainstem and spinal cord, grey matter is inside into the central canal or into ventricles, but brain wise it's outside. So the concentration brain wise outside will be glucose is more used by neuron cells than the cells as such, and that was the point which I made it clear. Neuron cell use 61.803, other cells use only 38%. So inside you don't see red, but outside you see red. That is what would be there in a PET scan as such with a CT. Now there are two things. One is the particular second one, you see red color in front but blue color backwards, and that is where dementia starts. Alzheimer's disease. They forget things. They may forget things mean their sensory system is defective, is not getting enough glucose as such. Since they are not getting glucose and oxygen as such, so they are deficient in functioning, and if they improve that they will not have. So in my understanding is diabetes, Alzheimer's disease are maybe connected, or deficiencies are connected, and if that is taken care of, I think things will be perfectly fine for people to remember for rest of the time. Keeping a conscious effort is more important. So as far as Alzheimer is concerned, it is sensory system which is posterior part, which is defective, not the anterior motor part. Frontal region is getting enough oxygen and glucose, but not back part. On the other side, you can see there is a front which is deficient, back is okay. And I think that is something which I have to be, there is a difference in sensory system is fine, the motor component is right, there is a deficiency. So both perfect, both front and back normal. One front is normal, back is bad, another front is bad, back is normal, and this is how we see the PET scan, CT scan as such, given a picture of glucose uptake as such. That is the utility value. Now come to the question of three different images. Left side is a PET CT scan for glucose utility, which I have shown you earlier, and again same thing, you can see uniformity in that particular thing, very clear, bright and nice. Now second is structural MRI for the brain stem, which is done to see how we can see the structure anatomy of the brain itself, but it will be grey color as such, not as bright as PET and scan. But if there is another third process is functional MRI. There is a new mechanism where the things are bent, and I have done PET CT once myself. I have also got structural MRI done. I also got fMRI done. But in fMRI I found optimum utilization function, because in that process you can literally see activity in the entire brain as bright as you can see. In my case, its the entire brain is fully integrated. I think that was an enlightening part. Worth spending money on research and do conscientious work with all the humanity, particularly concentration in the brain part, which I call samadhi. Even state of the mind, you are functioning in the brain or higher than the brain and making the blood flow to the brain much more efficient. That's what I meant. And your blood will go where your mind goes. Anyone who wants to be intelligent, super intelligent, should concentrate on brain, and beyond brain to the higher consciousness. You will definitely be 1,000 times better off, because you utilize oxygen, you utilize glucose, you will know even deficiency. Even if you have a deficiency of absorbing oxygen could also become clear, because you will not be able to do it. The person whose deficiency in oxygen is there or glucose is there, they cannot use the brain effectively at all. That is what I said TURIYA is all about. This particular research made me understand I need to keep my lungs very clear, have very good pulmonary functions, had 100% absorption of oxygen and utilize it effectively, and expel 61.803% of carbon dioxide, remains the whole thing, so the whole system works very well. I think once that kind of research is done, you are 1,000 times better to be in tune with universal consciousness. Now comes to the question of enlightenment or the TURIYA as such, the optimum oxygen glucose uptake. This is a picture. Now I am talking about Akash-Kosh, that is universal consciousness, and this is Schumann resonance field, and there is alpha rhythm of 7.83 around this, and that is stored of divine nature, and that is what I meant by 8. And that is the inner core of the earth, which revolves on 7.83 by Schumann resonance field. I think 8 is the optimal to see easily, but 7.83 to 8 is very close to each other, and if that can be seen in EEG, a power spectrum analysis through the brain with eyes open and eyes closed, I think you are very close to the universal consciousness. Now come to the question, ionosphere is the universal consciousness, which is 7.83. Now that you reach that particular thing only when the three outer layers of neocortex are activated. Unfortunately, no neuroscientist of the world is even aware of the function of the three outer layers of neocortex. Forget about that. They only talk about signals from sensory to come to the fourth layer of Betz layer, and everything starts from down to fourth layer, and fourth to down is all what human beings are used for. Outer three layers which make a perfect human being is not utilized, and only person who has utilized the three outer layers efficiently in a samadhi state and bring TURIYA state is Shiv Bhushan Sharma only, as far as the records are concerned. I am not talking of something which had not been recorded and put on plane. Now that will give you optimum utilization. Oxygen and glucose is there only, then 3 layers with it, because they use only subtle necessary. Only when there is no block in the arteries, everything is beautiful, flow is uniform and consistent, and is more than even 25% as such. I would go to that extent. Now come to the spiritual science, the scientific PhD research which I did from 1991 right up to today's stage. And electroencephalogram and power spectrum analysis, that was the main objective with which I worked. Now let me talk to you about normal EEG. 10.5 Hertz alpha wave are seen in the posterior part of the brain, as I showed you. When the mind is at rest, the eyes are closed. No alpha waves are seen in the rest of the brain is the reality. On thinking, the alpha waves are replaced by beta activity. On opening the eyes, no alpha waves are seen, and this is called alpha block or desynchronization with a normal brain. That means 10.5 Hertz from posterior part, not rest of the brain, and only when your eyes are closed and mind is at rest. And that is a normal which is seen by 100 years by everyone around, considered to be normal EEG. Now I am going to show you my pilot study with the 1991's initiation to first EEG. You can see, and the down is 93. You can see alpha frequency before opening the eyes very well, but when you open the eyes, it is replaced by beta activity. This is normal in 93. By the time I came to 95, by Akhand yoga as such started changes and started producing alpha frequency after opening the eyes. You can see the picture very clearly. This is my EEG of 93 when research started, and 95, within 2 years of working with Akhand yoga 10 stages, could achieve perfection in my own case one by one. Now come to the question of 2001, when PhD work was complete and given to the world. There is a particular EEG with eyes closed. Upper one is my case and lower is all the control subjects. Fundamentally looking at the picture, they look identical, but only difference is energy in my case is 3 times the energy of the other people as such. That means the person who is doing Kundalini yoga, who is doing TURIYA, utilizing oxygen, glucose optimally with the water, sodium, etc., 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 who is completely healthy, wealthy, wise and happy, in tune with universal consciousness, would have energy 3 times more than others, is something which is very clear in this particular picture with eyes closed. Now I am going to show you another picture of the same 2001 PhD work. You can see upper one is mine. I am able to produce alpha frequency abundant with samadhi state, and power also abundant, and is much 3 times more than others. But other normal people are not able to produce alpha, and particularly they are not able to bring concentrate on brain. They are more into samadhi or lower consciousness, not higher consciousness. I think that was the enlightening part, and I found I could produce it in 2001 itself, and that was very enlightening. And as a result, my PhD work was considered highly commendable, reported and everything. We are going to show you as we move on. Then 2018, I took another EEGs and 2 considered in one sitting. With the closed eyes, it was 8.5 Hertz throughout the brain. You can see it very clearly. Now, throughout the brain, it is 8.5 Hertz throughout the brain, is 2018. When the same thing was produced with eyes open, it was 8 Hertz throughout the brain. I think that was enlightening. That is TURIYA stage. That means how step by step I had come to that particular, and these EEGs were taken by the time I had already recognized, conceived and revealed Divyang for the first time in the history of mankind. That was enlightening, and everything connected with that is, and this was then after that. That means I had already reached that particular level, or I am reaching, and this is the concentration of TURIYA stage, that how step by step I have moved from 91 to ordinary consciousness, 93 awareness of 10.5 Hertz, then 95 alpha frequency coming with eyes open, and then over this, in the process how I meant to recognize, conceive and reveal the Divyang one by one, step by step to the world as such. I think that is what it is TURIYA all about. and their concentration is in the brain, and the higher consciousness universal. Man is a microcosmic representative of the macrocosmic universe. Only when you think and work and you want to be the Akash-Kosh with the universal consciousness, only you can go when your energy level is perfect, glucose utilization correct, oxygen is utilized, sodium, water, everything is perfect. You are like a normal person, and that concentration can give you the kind of impeccable wisdom which is there I am talking about, and I want everybody to use it and effectively and done with it. Now I am giving you the testimony given by my PhD guide, Professor A. Namachoyan, who was my teacher in Madras Medical College, who taught neuroscience to me in between 1969 and 70. Fantastic work, foundation there from Best and Taylor's book. Neuroscience was phenomenal. That's where I understood things were very clear. Incidentally, he became my guide at a later date and worked. And what are the few things which I am talking about in this? I want people to understand. He has gone and record to say he had known me for 4 decades, and he has talked immensely for my sincerity, integrity, etc. But at the same time, he made it very clear. I started from scratch on my own, worked on my own, and given it, and I don't think any PhD guide would give it. The whole research is done by the student, guided by the student, and he is only supervised to make sure that I don't make any mistake which is not scientifically acceptable. At the same time, he has also gone and record maybe power spectrum analysis, the EEG is done for the first time internationally, and this was done in 2001 itself, which is 24 years back. And I am sorry to say in 2025 again, nobody has used this particular process as such. Is very unfortunate. But he has gone into that. Once you have integrated, you lead things, you can be systematically very well step by step going on, and that shows how the guide itself has known, who has known me for 4 decades. It is sincerity, integrated hard work, since all the things which go with this to be a perfect human being can do it. And I think I am grateful to him to put in his own words to something which the world can see. Only integrated person who is a perfect in every way, who does not drink, who does not smoke, who does not take non-vegetarian, who does not do even single thing against anybody, is the one who is going to be in tune with universal consciousness. If I am healthy, wealthy, wise and happy in today, even at nearing 73, 74, it shows it is concentration and health, wealth, wisdom, everything is done. Only a perfect human being would have no difficulty in money, no difficulty in name, no difficulty in fame, no difficulty, but at the same time, they are the one who will maintain a low profile, humility and do excellent work without coming to the public domain to even see. Even today, hardly anybody can see more than one picture of mine. I don't appear in any podcast, I don't think, because I don't feel there is a need to it. People should learn fundamental theory, science, otherwise on their own, not by going and showing other things. And once that is done, I think we can move on very well to the higher levels of consciousness. And this is where at last I don't think I need to talk much about it. I think enough for the day. Thank you very much.